Guys, I know it seems like I've vanished in thin air lately, but rest assured, behind the scenes I'm working hard on some really big preparations for the upcoming new NVIDIA RTX 3000 and AMD RX 6000 series graphics cards, as well as AMD's new performance beasts of Ryzen 5000 CPUs. Part of my personal preparation, especially since that behemoth RTX 3090 also is planned, is today's 1250 watt power supply, which Enermax kindly sent me over for my project. This, my friends of electrical components, is the Enermax MaxTytan power supply with a whopping 1250 watts. Needless to say, we are no longer talking about 80+ gold efficiency, nor about platinum. No, titanium it is. As the saying goes, all that glitters is not gold. Sometimes it happens to be titanium. Greetings go out to Marco, who came up with this ingenious slogan, so to speak. I think there's no need for me to tell you that this is a premium model of the highest performance tier, if you will. Something like this, of course, comes in at a hefty price tag. At the time of this video, such a MaxTytan unit goes for like $362 all the way up to $400 at the end of the day, depending on where you decide to get one from. That's a whole lot of money to spend on a power supply, but then again, absolute enthusiasts are targeted, ones that no longer find 850 or 1000 watts to be sufficient enough. What I need so much power for, you'll find out in today's video. Many of you obviously, understandably, wouldn't go out and buy such a PSU, but some of you may still be interested in finding out what exactly such a high-end PSU has to offer besides more wattage. Those of you that have dealt with quite a number of power supplies would normally expect a more or less standard box size. Nope, not with today's MaxTytan. As with everything on this one, its oversized packaging and the total gross weight of 5.2 kilograms, mind-blowing to say the least. The PSU on its own already weighs in at a whopping 3.7 kilograms. Please excuse my over-the-top enthusiasm with power supplies once again, but come on, this is crazy. As for what's included, there's a lot. While unboxing, I put cable after cable onto my table and simply was left amazed by the amount of these. Not only that, each and every oh so little cable is individually sleeved. This, if you're asking me, not only looks incredibly cool, but also makes for a super premium look. To get each and every cable perfectly in line, there are these comms, whatever you may want to call them, included by Enermax. Besides cable ties, Velcro straps, screws, also included is quite the interesting module, a small gimmick if you will, the so-called Cooler Genie, a semi-fanless fan controller for up to 3 external fans. Depending on the PSU load, a bunch of different fan modes can be set. Furthermore, there also is a fan delay function on board that makes the fans inside the PC spin for another 40 to 60 seconds after shutdown, a great way to get out any remaining heat. Not bad, even though I believe many users will skip and not make use of that gimmick. Oh, and a little bonus are these plastic caps for the connections directly on the power supply, dust protection more or less. So there's plenty of cool little gimmicks, and there will be even more throughout the video. But now let's get to the main event, the power supply itself. What immediately is noticeable is the length of the unit. Coming in at 200mm, it's quite a bit longer than your usual standard 150 to 160mm PSU. Aesthetically and in terms of build quality, this makes a top-notch impression, which however is a rather subjective statement to make. Other than that, not all of us tend to pay attention and care about looks when dealing with power supplies. Nonetheless, hats off for this elegant design. Quality, that's an aspect where Enermax paid lots of attention to, and it's apparent. Highest grade components are promised, among those Japanese capacitors that are able to withstand up to 105 degrees Celsius. This power supply is certified for 24/7 continuous use at 50 degrees Celsius ambient temperature, and when it comes to warranty, Enermax backs this unit up with a 10-year warranty. What's going to cause some mixed feelings among some of you is the single rail design. Yes, while such a single 12-volt rail offers a ton of power, 104 amps, there's also a small risk of what can happen when things go wrong. A multi-rail unit sure would bring slightly more protection to the table, but as long as there are good protection mechanisms implemented, which this unit 100% does have, the risk of things going south is extremely low. I personally never had any issues with power supplies that were related to a single rail design. Whereas for 80 plus gold or platinum, 92 to 93% efficiency is expected, titanium on the other hand is delivering us up to 95%. A huge positive side effect of high efficiency, relatively low heat output. Meaning while the MaxTytan is equipped with a 139mm twister bearing fan, seeing or hearing that fan in action will remain a rarity, since this unit is operating semi-passively. This in turn means the fan only spins up once a specific internal temperature, or rather PSU load, is reached. In the case of today's 1250 watt model, the fan remains off even at up to 50–60% load. This would translate into 750 watts completely fanless, noiseless when it comes to the PSU. For the paranoid ones, which I'm sometimes also part of, I would have preferred having a button that allows us to choose between active and semi-passive cooling though. Onboard also is Enermax's so-called DFR technology, that is dust-free rotation. After starting the PSU, the fan will spin in reverse at full speed for a few seconds in order to remove a little bit of accumulated dust inside the unit before returning back to normal operation, which in most cases will be off, depending on the system load. As for the actual fan noise, I can't tell you anything other than what Enermax themselves state, a max of 25 decibels, since I simply couldn't put enough load onto the PSU to trigger the fan. And there we are, another gimmick, although gimmick may be the wrong word for it. I find the integrated digital wattage meter at the rear of the MaxTytan really cool. We are basically shown the current power draw in real time, especially useful for testing/benchmarking purposes, as in my case. Although it's a bit of a shame that display is in a bit of a not-so-practical location, there's no extension option for it sadly, also no software to work with. Nonetheless, for an open test bench layout, a very welcome feature indeed. The cable quality I've already mentioned, top-notch. The amount of cables and connectors also great. 2 8-pin CPU power connectors, 8 PCIe, 16 SATA and 8 Molex. Amazing. The cable length is rather standard, so nothing to criticize here either. Now before I tell you my reasons for such an overkill PSU, I would first like to talk a bit about the internals and some measurements regarding this unit. As always, of course, do not copy what I'm doing here. Opening up power supplies can be extremely dangerous and can cost you your life. I was greeted by an Enermax branded fan and a rather obvious high-end platform by the OEM Channel Well Technology, CWT for short. The platform is very tidy, cables are kept at a minimum. At this point, a quick reminder and disclaimer, I'm neither a professional when it comes to power supplies, nor am I qualified for serious electrical talk, so I can only point out the very basics. Still, what I can tell you is that this is a unit that sports a full bridge topology along with LLC converters. On the secondary side, synchronous rectification and obviously DC-DC converters. In terms of actual components, on the primary side, there's a 400V 680 microfarad electrolytic capacitor by the Japanese brand Nijikan, as well as another one by Nippon Chemical rated at 420V 560 microfarad. Spread across the secondary side also are caps by Nippon Chemical. As for solid caps, I think I spotted ones by FP Cap/Nijikan and Elite if I'm not entirely mistaken here, so top-notch quality. Of course, I was not able to carry out really meaningful tests due to my lack of testing equipment, as always, which is why I have to content myself with some really simple basic ones. The voltage on those 12, 5 and 3.3 volt rails is very stable with very minimal fluctuations at different loads, and it pretty much matches those ideal values except for the 5 volt rail, which comes with minor discrepancies. And as for efficiency, indeed, thanks to that titanium certification, we do in fact manage to shave off a couple more watts compared to platinum and gold ratings. But why do I need such an immense overkill power supply to start with? Well, to be honest, I don't need 1250 watts. A 1000 or 1050 watt unit certainly would have done the trick too, but Enermax kindly decided to support me with what I have planned and sent over their top-of-the-line unit. Believe it or not, I have plans for an NVIDIA RTX 3090 review. My 850W PSU on my test system would however be sufficient enough for it. But here's the thing, I also happen to own an AMD Threadripper system with 24 cores, namely the 3960X, for video editing and the whole video production in general. When I put the CPU and my current RTX 2080 Ti to work at full load, I get to about 670 watts of power draw. I currently have an 850W power supply by Thermaltake installed in that rig. No problem, but in between, while the RTX 3090 is not in use for CPU benchmarks and the like, that card will be seated in my also power-hungry Threadripper system, where I'll take advantage of it for workstation workloads. The RTX 3090 compared to the 2080 Ti is on a whole different level when talking about power draw. Custom models by the AIBs, Nvidia's board partners, can go even higher in terms of power consumption. So in the worst case scenario, my 850W PSU simply wouldn't do the job anymore, and even if it did, I wouldn't be comfortable letting it sit and peak close to its upper limits, although I won't be hitting the peak non-stop. So thanks once again goes out to Enermax. This easily saved me over 200 euros or dollars that I would have spent on a 1000 or 1050W power supply, meaning the amount of money saved I can now easily put towards those GPU and CPU reviews. To sum things up, with the MaxTytan, Enermax clearly is targeting the hardcore enthusiasts that don't always link performance with pricing. Were I to bring up the topic price to performance ratio, things would end up a little unfair. Enermax is well aware of that themselves and does also cater to that audience that pay more attention to value for money. Here and there I would have wished for some finishing touches when it comes to some of those features, but this simply is complaining on the highest level. Without the slightest doubt, today's MaxTytan is the by far best well-built and equipped power supply I've ever laid my hands on. With that being said, thanks to all of you that stuck around and made it to the very end of this long video. Take care, guys.